What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Louie T, here with a brand new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Hope this Tuesday afternoon or whenever you are listening to this is treating you well. Beautiful weather this week. NBA play-in tournament starts tonight, so you got a little bit of programming on television if that interests you. NFL draft a week and a half away. I mean, we are closing in on the 2025 NFL draft, and that is part of the reason that we're here today to talk about some of the wild cards in this upcoming draft. And there's going to be some interesting names that we talk about today for various reasons. And this draft is really funny because I guess I have to get used to this. My team is drafting 29th overall, my favorite team. And the excitement for this draft isn't as great as it usually is for me. Um, I maybe two because we only have 5 picks as well. So I don't know. It just feels weird. Like we're 10 days away from the draft, and I'm just like, whatever, right? But I am starting to get really intrigued by certain storylines, and we're going to talk about some of those today. Derek Carr kind of factors into all of this. Some injury news on that front. We'll talk about all of that and more here on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 497th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So glad you could be here with me. If you haven't already done so, do me a huge favor. On the way in, just go ahead and hit that like button. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps this channel grow exponentially. Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Quickly, I feel like I should mention this, but since we're talking about the draft, and we'll be talking about a player here in a bit that has found himself in a little bit of hot water heading into the draft. There was a sad passing the other day. NFL hopeful wide receiver Kyron Lacy of the LSU Tigers sadly took his own life just the other day. And it was a really sad situation because, for one, anytime someone takes their life, it doesn't matter if you're a high profile athlete or you're a 14-year-old kid who got cyberbullied. It doesn't matter. You could be 50, you could be 30, you could be 10. It sucks when someone thinks that there's no other way out but to end their own life tragically. Um, Kyron Lacy made a mistake. People make mistakes all the time, every day. And it was a mistake that ended up costing someone else their life. And that can be something tough to deal with. I always tell the youth of America, I've been telling the youth of America this for years. Please be careful with the decisions that you make, because all it takes is one bad decision to alter the path and the trajectory of your life. I used to talk to my nephews, I talk to my kids, I talk to my cousins about that kind of stuff all the time. Be mindful. Think about the things that you do before you do them. He made a mistake, and that one mistake haunted him. And everything he had worked for up until that point was pretty much gone. He knew it, and there was an unbelievable weight that he was carrying, and it consumed him ultimately. It's a sad set of circumstances for everyone involved, and it's a really tragic situation. You hate to see it, and all the outpouring of support and love for his family. I thought his dad had a great post talking about, and that takes incredible strength on the day that you find out your son has tragically taken his life. You take it upon yourself to put a post out there to others to be mindful of, keeping a watchful eye over their kids, and just being more present, making sure that you're there and not allowing them to tell you that they're okay when they may not be okay. So these are all life lessons. I always tell you, football, sports in general, I always tell you that sports in general is a microcosm of life. Take the lessons as they come, right? But with that said, may Kyron Lacy rest in peace, and may those affected by that tragedy all the way around, may they find the strength to move forward in a positive manner. Just a tough situation. But with that said, let's get to the draft, the 2025 NFL draft, something that Kyron Lacy wanted to be a part of. And some guys that are going to be, I think, potential wild cards. And there are going to be plenty more like that we're not going to talk about tonight. And I would love it if in the comment section you list some wild cards that you think exist in this draft that we don't talk about, that I don't bring up. And maybe, we can talk about that a little bit later on in the program. Because I can think of another guy that I did not list, but I'll see if you guys list him. If not, I may bring him up a little bit later in the program. But I want to talk about these four guys in particular. I'm fascinated because, again, for me, the draft doesn't hold as much weight this year because my team is picking so far back, and we only have 5 picks. I think it's more that we only have 5 picks right now, and that does add to the intrigue of what they may potentially do to acquire more draft capital. But as of right now, if everything stays the way that it is, you have 5 picks. You have 2 picks in the first 2 days. You have 5 overall, 2 of which are in the 6th and the 7th round. That doesn't mean, honestly, you got 5 picks. 3 of them are in day 3. That doesn't move the needle for me, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Commanders. But that said, let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. And I want to talk about NFL draft wild cards, guys that there are various opinions on, wide-ranging opinions on. Where will these guys end up? They add intrigue to the draft. I want to start with the quarterback position. 2 guys in particular. One that is going to hear his name called in the first round without question. The other, he might. And I may have a double O that I got to offer up. I don't know. I may have a double O that I got to offer up. I was very dismissive and disrespectful to a certain someone just the other day. And we'll bring him up, and we'll bring the player in question up here in a second. But let's start with Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders is a lightning rod in this particular year's draft. And I've talked about that already. We had a whole podcast that was centered around a discussion with Shedeur Sanders, and, what I thought, how I felt like, the conversation around him had gone. And, there's some real interesting questions when you talk about Shedeur Sanders in particular. He has a very good skill set, but I don't think it's enough to separate him to where you're looking at him as this, gotta have prospect at the quarterback position. Everything that he does from an athletic, physical prowess standpoint is average. I think where he shines is above the neck. I think his processing speed is the best in this draft. I think his ability to throw with touch, timing, anticipation, and to layer the football is the best in this draft as well. But these aren't qualities that get you drafted top 5 in the NFL draft. And so there's a lot of conversation around Shedeur Sanders. And you know what's one of the most fascinating things, and this happens, this isn't, new, but one of the most fascinating things about Shedeur was last year this time, he was viewed as, a potential number 1 pick, right? And then you get to the combine, and then there's this discussion between he and Cam Ward. Who's going to be the number 1 pick? Who's going to separate themselves? And by the time I felt like we got to like pro days, it was, and we hadn't even seen either of them at their pro day. By the time we had gotten to the pro day season, it felt like it was already a done deal and the decision had already been made that Cam Ward was the number 1 pick. And maybe scouts already felt that way. Maybe the people in the know already felt that way about Shedeur Sanders. But we've gotten to a point now where he went from consensus number 1 overall pick about a year ago this time to, all right, he's in the mix. He or Cam Ward are going to fight it out for who is going to have the right to be called the number 1 pick. And this kind of happened 2 years ago with Bryce Young and man, and CJ Stroud, where the conversation was back and forth, and then Bryce Young pulled away late. This happened with Ward a lot sooner than I think a lot of people may have thought, but it's gone to the point where now we're looking at Shedeur, and this is a year where time of year where you pick apart guys and you start over analyzing this, that, and the third. But I think people know what Shedeur is, right, as a quarterback, and it's more so people trying to pick apart, attack his character, right? It's almost like character assassination. I mean, to the point where, and I didn't talk about this on the podcast the other day because I thought it was bullshit. But the whole patting of the football, I mean, what are we talking about? Like, that's when people are being petty and they're just looking for a reason, right? He's patting the ball too much. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks that pat the hell out of the football and burp the baby. You don't want them doing that when an open receiver is there, but that's not something that you watched with him on tape and say, he's patting the ball too much, right? But whatever, right? People just like to say shit sometimes. So with Shedeur, it's interesting because we went from number 1 overall to, in the discussion, to be number 1 to, okay, he should be the 2nd pick in the draft, to, all right, he's not getting past the Giants, to now, wait, if the Giants don't take him, well, where the hell is he going to go? And then you're like, okay. Then the news of Derek Carr's shoulder injury surfaces about 5 days ago. And you're like, whoa. Well, I mean, that was already a destination that people were pointing to and saying, yeah, New Orleans seems like a great spot for him. He doesn't have to battle the elements. He's going to be indoors at least half the season. It's a great place from a marketing standpoint. If you're Dion or Shedeur, you can continue to really kill it in a major market like Louisiana, and they'll gravitate towards him. If he wins and wins big, that's a place where you can absolutely kill it from not only on the field, but off the field. And so it's a big enough market. It makes a ton of sense. You're indoors. It's not a great division, so you can get in there and affect change immediately. And they got a quarterback, a former quarterback, as the head coach. So he's going to really cater to Shedeur and try to really build an offense around him. And so it's a great fit. And so people were already kind of pegging him at 9. And then the Derek Carr information comes out. And we're like, whoa, this makes it even more tantalizing that he end up in New Orleans. Then we get the news just yesterday that the Giants are going to make one last trip out to Boulder, Colorado to meet with Shador, have a workout with him, sit him down, kind of, go over every single thing they can think of when it comes to making this decision. And having watched the offseason Hard Knocks with the Giants last year, we know just how involved their owner, John Mara, is. And I've heard this a lot over the last 24 hours or so, but when things like this happen, it's not uncommon that an owner has gotten involved in the process late, and they want to make sure that the team isn't making a mistake, or maybe going off of their impulse saying, hey, I think this is the guy that we should be taking. Let's go out here and make sure that I'm right, or at a bare minimum you're right and I'm wrong, right? Whatever the case may be. And I've heard from GMs who have been in that, kind of position, and have seen things like this happen. And a lot of them are saying the same thing, that the likelihood is the Giants, and again, this is why you can't leave decisions. This is why you don't want guys in a position like the Giants are in right now with their general manager, Joe Shane, and their head coach, Brian Daboll, because they're not making decisions based off of what's best for the organization long term right now. They're making decisions best in what's the best interest of them keeping their jobs in New York, which is, hey, we got to win now. And it's a tough situation to be in because the owner is thinking long term now and into the future. But I've already said that bringing a quarterback into a situation where there could be wholesale changes in the following year is just not a healthy environment to bring a young quarterback in. And I think Shador not being from a talent perspective, difference maker also, factors in, because guess what? I could sit here and tell you that it's not an ideal situation to bring a quarterback into when there's a potential for the GM and the head coach to both be fired next year, and all new brass coming in, and a whole new coaching staff, a whole new offensive coordinator, a whole new playbook for a young quarterback. I could sit here and tell you that, but guess what? If Shador Sanders were Jaden Daniels from last year's draft, if he were Drake May from last year's draft, we're not having this conversation. The Giants are taking him at 2. Whether they might not be there or not, they don't give a shit. They're taking him at 2. But because the talent simply isn't there, they can pass. But John Mara's like, wait, hold on a minute. This kid is polarizing. We need a quarterback. I know you guys don't think Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are the answer, clearly. And again, this is the tough part. I'm an advocate, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm an advocate for, when you're drafting as high as the Giants and the Browns are, it's not smart to pass on quarterback. Now, I get it. It's not smart to take a quarterback if you don't believe in that guy to be a high-level talent, and you're passing up on high-level talent. I get that too, right? And that's the conversation that they're having in those war rooms, right? Are we at liberty? Are we in a position to pass up on a Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter to take a Shador Sanders when he might not be the guy for our organization? He might not be the right decision, and you're passing up a premium talent to draft a guy that isn't at a position that is premium. But if he doesn't live up to the pick, then it's a mistake. So I get it. But the thing you got to understand in this league is, it's hard to lose enough games to be in a position without having to trade up or to, have something fall in your favor. It's hard to lose enough. You have to absolutely be not only horrible, Your quarterback position has to be horrible, but you have to have all of the worst luck and all the bad breaks have to go, your way, essentially, which it's almost an oxymoron because bad breaks going your way isn't a good thing, right? But all of that has to happen. All those pieces have to fall into place because it's hard to lose 13 games in the NFL season. It just is. It's hard to lose 14 games in the NFL season. You have to be really bad. Because as we saw last year, even when you're trying, like teams aren't trying to lose, but even when you have really no interest in winning and you're demoralized and your roster is depleted, you're still going to run into a team that they just can't get out of their own way, and you're going to still find a way to win. That's what happened with the Giants playing the Colts last year at the end of the season, right? You don't run into a team that can't get out of their own way. It's hard to lose as many games as it takes to be the number 1, number 2, number 3 pick in the draft in consecutive years is what I'm getting at. And so can you afford to pass on quarterback? You keep hearing, we'll just suck for Arch Manning. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. You think Russell Wilson, the combination of Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson are going to lose you 14 games? I doubt it. I doubt it. Now, it's a tough schedule, but you're no worse than 5-12, 6-11 with that duo of quarterbacks there. You're 6-11, you're 5-12. That's not getting you the number 1 pick. And if I have the number 1 pick, I have the number 2 pick, and there's 2 good quarterbacks, and both of the teams need quarterbacks, because more likely than not, if you end up 1, 2, or 3, you probably need a quarterback. More likely than not, you need a quarterback. So I'm not trading the pick to you. That was the situation last year. There were teams dying, including the Giants, dying to get up, dying to get their hands on Drake May or Jaden Daniels or any of those guys. And they couldn't because the top 3 picks belong to teams that all needed quarterbacks. Not trading you the pick when I got a chance to solve my own quarterback issues. So the Giants are heading out to Boulder, Colorado to take one final look at Shedeur Sanders, to have one final situation where they sit down and comb over everything with him to see if he, in fact, is the right decision at 3 or not. He's not out of the 3rd overall pick discussion. But say the Giants hold serve and they decide, I've said this, I'm still adamant that Shedeur goes top 3. I just find it hard to believe. We've done this song and dance. We did this with CJ Stroud. Oh, is he going to fall? The Texans aren't going to take him at 2. Bullshit. But that was different because CJ Stroud was super talented. Right. And I don't, that's not what Shedeur Sanders is. So I could see it, happening. But if he falls out of the top 3, it's funny with the Derek Carr information of him having a shoulder injury that could cost him the entire 2025 season. Dan Morgan, who is the general manager of the Carolina Panthers, who currently holds the 8th overall pick in the draft, 1 pick before the New Orleans Saints get on the clock at number 9, said with the news of Derek Carr's injury, he expected his phone to be ringing off the hook. And he got no phone calls. Now, deadline spur action. And again, you're still over a week away from the draft getting underway, and no one has any idea what's going to happen. You're not trading for the 8th overall pick 10 days before the draft. But you do pick up the phone and say, hey, if this scenario plays itself out, let's get a deal in place here. Let's start talking turkey. That didn't happen. Teams put out feelers, not necessarily to get a deal done, but just to check the temperature. Let's see what's going on here. Are you interested? And clearly, Dan Morgan sounds more than willing to move out of 8. More than happy to accommodate someone that's looking to get in front of the Saints. Because newsflash, if he gets to 9, he's there. That's where the slide stops. I think. If you're the Saints, you can't love Spencer Rattler that much that you're willing to pass up on taking a quarterback at 9 to roll with Rattler with Derek Carr potentially out for the entire season. That you're essentially, and I said Spencer Rattler was a wild card in last year's draft, and I watched him play quite a bit this past year, and he was solid, but it wasn't enough to make me say I need to see it again. The Titans just did that with Will Levis, and it didn't go well. And so I'm interested to see if the Saints say, no, we'll roll with Spencer Rattler. Or if they say, we got a chance to get a quarterback, let's take Shedeur Sanders. So it's going to be interesting to see where Shedeur lands. That's the first guy that's a wild card in this draft, because in a draft where I told you I don't expect a ton of movement, not in the first round, at least. You might see a lot of shaking and moving in day 2, but in day number 1, I don't expect a ton of movement. He could facilitate movement. He could be the guy that forces teams to get active and want to come up. He's one of the few guys in this draft that I think has the ability to do that. So he's interesting. Another interesting name at the quarterback position, I can't believe I'm saying this, is Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama. So I may end up owing Todd McShay a massive 00. Right. Todd McShay had in his mock draft recently 4 quarterbacks going in the first round. And Todd's been a lot more unfiltered on his show now that he's no longer affiliated with ESPN. And he still has sources around the league. He's still plugged in. And he was the one that talked about Shedeur Sanders still being in play at number 3 with the Giants. And he said that before we heard about the meeting that was to take place today, with them going to Boulder, Colorado to work him out one final time and have conversations with him. So Todd is still plugged in. So with that said, Todd being still plugged in, Todd McShay said that, hey, look out for Jalen Milroe being drafted in the first round. And I'm like, Todd, bro, what the hell are you talking about, bro? Like, whatever you're smoking, keep that shit away from me, because it's dangerous. But Todd was adamant. And he said Sean McVay absolutely loves Jalen Milroe. And I believe that. Now, I believe that because if you look at the quarterbacks that they've had in LA with Sean McVay that have been behind their starting quarterback, whether it's Goff or Matthew Stafford, you look at the quarterbacks, it's been this weird guy that's super athletic. You're not really sure how well he throws the football, but man, could he be a difference maker just off of his legs? Remember that playoff game? I forget the name of the quarterback they had. We've seen them have some weird quarterbacks. So I wouldn't be shocked, because Sean McVay thinks outside the box, and he may just look at Jalen Milroe's speed and say, he's a problem. And it may not be unlike Colin Kaepernick. If you recall, when he came into the league out of Nevada, Colin Kaepernick was drafted by the 49ers, and that first year, they just had packages for him. But you could see what they were trying to do. You could see them trying to integrate him. And, by the time he was a second-year player, he was ready to take over, pretty much, if I'm not mistaken. So I think teams view Milroe in that same light. We saw what he ran in 40, right? Like, I don't understand why, if you're super fast, why you don't run, right? And he's super fast, but I think he ran just to remind people of how fast he is, because it could only help him. It can't hurt him, right? If you're a top prospect and you're super fast, I would run, right? If I'm a top prospect and I'm not sure about my speed, but you view me as a top prospect, I'm not running. It doesn't help me. It can only hurt me, right? So Milroe ran, and he ran ridiculously fast, which is what we anticipated him doing, because you watched him do it for 3 years at Alabama, so you knew how fast he was already. And there's some intrigue around him potentially. And in Todd McShay's mock draft, he had the Giants trading up in front of the Rams back into the first round to get Milroe. So assuming they pass on quarterback at 3, they jump back into the first round to get Jalen Milroe. I laughed my ass off at that theory, but I coupled that conversation and the fact that the NFL they put out their list of invitees yesterday. There's 17 guys that have been invited to the NFL draft in Green Bay for presumably night 1, right? It's embarrassing if you go to the draft and you're still there for day 2 of the draft, right? You never want to be Geno Smith. You never want to be that guy that shows up there expecting to get drafted, don't get drafted, and now the camera is just all on you, waiting for you to hear your name called, which will usually happen very early the next day, but it's still embarrassing because you shouldn't be packing but one suit, right? That's the thought process. I'm gonna hear my name called. I'm gonna smile with the commissioner, take some pictures, and get the hell out of there, right? And head to my destination. That's how it's supposed to go. It's embarrassing when it doesn't. So if you're Jalen Milroe, I'm not accepting an invite from the NFL if I don't think I'm going in the first round. Unless it's your dream to go up on the stage and shake hands with the commissioner, stand there with the jersey and all of that good stuff. But they don't do that in the second round most of the time. They usually do that for the guys that get invited. So the commissioner usually doesn't do the second round picks. If you recall, they turn that over to one of his VPs. It's usually like Troy Vincent, who does the second round, or they'll start parading out former players that are legends within, or, guys that have played there recently for those teams and let them start calling out the picks. But the commissioner generally doesn't do past the first round. If I'm Jalen Milroe, I don't want to be the guy that they put in the green room that the camera keeps focusing in on after every pick that they don't call my name. The only reason you take that invite is because you got an inkling. Someone's told you, hey, bro, I'm going to take you. That's a dangerous game to play. You know how many players we hear about after the fact who were told by NFL teams? I remember Randy Moss vividly saying, the Cowboys told me if I were there, they were going to take me, and they didn't take him. And there's so many stories of guys. Brian Branch said the Commanders told him, if you're there, we're going to take you, and they didn't take him. And he was surprised because he just knew they were going to draft him. There are so many stories of teams saying, hey, if you're there, I'm going to take you. This isn't the NBA where you get a promise and you stop working out for other teams because they're definitely going to take you. This is the NFL draft. They will stab you in your back as fast as you can blink if there's another scenario that pops up. I'm not going to be the NFL's token, charity case where everybody gets to feel for this guy and talk him up. Oh, he's a talented kid. He'll get drafted. So I don't want to be that guy. Unless you think you're going to get drafted in the first round. This one, it has me perplexed because I don't like Jalen Milroe could go in the third round. Jalen Milroe could go in the third round. Let me say that again. Jalen Milroe could go in the third round. He should be going in the third or the fourth round. And he's coming to the NFL draft as an invitee. I don't know if I've ever heard of a guy that could like, I'd put it at like 15% he hears his name day one. It's very low. Probably 10% chance he gets drafted in the first round. I'd up it to say 40% chance he gets drafted in the second round. And it's probably a 70% chance he gets drafted in the third round. I'm not showing up at the NFL draft if there's not a 60 to 70% chance I'm getting drafted in the first round. Hell, for me personally, it's got to be 90% chance I'm getting drafted in the first round. Like, it's almost impossible that I don't go in the first round. I know I'm getting drafted in the first round. This guy could not get drafted in the second round and still be sitting in the green room. That's not okay. But again, the NFL's job is to not, their job isn't to police who or when you're getting drafted. It's to put the invites out there. It's your job as the player to be like, nah, I'm gonna chill at the house, man. I'm not going. I could see an NFL team looking at Jalen Milroe and saying, he's a problem. Don't love him as a pure passer, drop back guy, none of that shit. Not now, at least. But to bring him into the program, to have a package for him as a runner, as a dual threat, while he's learning the system, I could see a team biting on that. Absolutely. Colin Kaepernick style, you damn right I could see a team being all over that shit. And bringing him in and letting him run around a little bit and really, causing, because that forces a defensive coordinator to have to spend a few more hours a week preparing for that team because they're putting in a package for him to run around. And guess what? He can still throw it. It's not like he can't throw. So just when you want to lock in on him as a runner, he lets that bitch rip 35 yards down the field. It's intriguing, I will say. It's intriguing. Anyway, I digress. Next guy that's really interesting. I think he's a wild card is Teteroa McMillan. Ted McMillan, as he's more affectionately known as. Ted is one of those dudes, and we've talked about that throughout this process, that he's kind of that Cali cool, laid back, and that didn't move the needle for some people. When people see you're cool, you're laid back, you're not fazed by much, they start to look at that as, oh, he doesn't care or he doesn't love football. You know how people like to draw direct, assumptions and conclusions from, this thing or that thing. And again, he may not love football. He was asked in an interview, what was his favorite sport coming up to play? And it was volleyball. Like, he may not love football. And as a guy that the sport that I was best at, I didn't love it as much. I can attest that sometimes it's fun to play a sport, but you don't necessarily, but you're good at it, but you don't necessarily love it. That matters. You want a guy that loves it. Like, one of the things that you will hear general managers talk about all the time, that's one of their prerequisites, is, do you love football? There's nothing tougher than to coach a player that he doesn't really care. He don't love this shit. It's a check. It's a job. That was Josh Dotson in Washington. As a fan watching him, you could tell he didn't love football. He loved the check. It was cool, but I don't love this shit. If I wasn't doing this, if I could still get paid and not do this, I would do that. Right? There's guys you hear, I do this for free. I love this shit. They're lying, but that's how much they love it, though. Like, I want to play this. I've been doing this since I was a kid. I love this shit. That's the guy you want. And there are guys that are just talented that are like, yeah, I don't really love this shit, but it's a check. It's a really good check. So I'm going to do it. Tet's one of those guys that gives off those vibes. Now, again, I don't know what his care factor is. I can't speak to that. But you look at him, You look at his build, you look at his body control, you look at his ability, and then yes, he does take plays off. Yes. A lot of guys do that. Let's not act like Ted McMillan is the first dude that you watch on the backside of a play who doesn't give a shit. Okay, we can talk about corners that do that all the time. We can talk about other receivers that do that shit. Okay? So, like, let's not act like he's the first guy that you've watched take plays off. Some guys do that shit. At the end of the day, it's you're gonna have to figure out if one, and this is hard to do because once upon a time, guys weren't coached up to answer these questions that they're gonna face from teams. Once upon a time, it was more natural. Yes, there were always agents involved, but these guys are coached now. You didn't used to get coached. It was more genuine, right? You'd ask questions and you'd get a sense of what a guy was or wasn't. Guys can say the right things, go in there with the right demeanor to get through the process and make a team believe like, no, this guy, he loves this. He wants to be here. When the whole time he's like, I don't, but whatever. There are people that think this guy could come off the board as early as 4 to New England. They need a number 1 wide receiver. They got Stephon Diggs. I know you've seen the videos of Stephon Diggs working his way back from that ACL tear. He looks like he'll be ready week 1. He looks like he'll be ready week 1. I'm actually shocked. He's 30 years old, and he's bouncing back that quickly from a torn ACL that he got midway through the season. We're talking probably week 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that neighborhood. I did not expect to see him doing the things that he is doing at this point of the offseason. But it just speaks to, his care factor, how rapidly his body was able to heal, and then the work he puts in. But they still need a number 1 receiver. They don't know what they're getting out of Stephon Diggs. I don't think the Patriots are drafting Ted McMillan at 4. But that's where the Ted McMillan watch starts, at 4. Who knows where it ends, right? All it takes is one team to say, to hell with what y'all talking about. He's Mike Evans, and we're taking him. But a lot of teams could say, yeah, I don't trust him. I'm good. Not in the first round, not with the 15th pick overall, not with the 17th pick, not with the 11th pick. I don't trust him. Next thing you know, we're at 25 and he's still on the board. This is a guy that we were talking about as a top 5, top 10 pick pretty much all college football season. All of a sudden, who knows where he's going to go? He's not. I don't foresee him falling out of the first round, because even if the teams toward the top in the middle of the draft decide we're good, one of these teams that are a playoff team is like, oh shit, he shouldn't be here. We're gonna take him. You don't think Buffalo could use a Ted McMillan? You're outside your damn mind. Now, I doubt they do that. They drafted Keon Coleman in the 2nd round last year, but I don't think Keon Coleman, I said this last year, I'm going to say it again, I don't think Keon Coleman's a number 1 wide receiver. I don't think the Bills have a number 1 wide receiver right now. So Ted McMillan would be exactly what the doctor ordered for a team like that. But trust me, there are plenty of teams. You don't think, well, Green Bay doesn't draft first-round wide receivers, but you don't think the Packers could use a Ted McMillan? Yeah, right. Like, you don't expect that type of talent to fall to you as a playoff team. They rarely do they, right? That rarely happens. Well, could happen. Who knows? Ted McMillan is very interesting. He's a wild card in this draft. And then the last guy, God, I hate when situations like this arise because it's so tough to navigate this. But generally, teams just err on the side of caution. Like, it's not my job to police whether you're innocent or not. You get the facts the best you can, but from an optics standpoint, I think teams are just going to take Isaiah Bond off their board, right? They're going to be at least a quarter to half of the league that just completely take him off their board. For those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, Texas wide receiver Isaiah Bond recently turned himself in to the authorities as there was a warrant out for his arrest for sexual assault. Now, all of the facts surrounding the situation are sketchy at best. He, maintains his innocence, which most guys do. And I don't like to point fingers and I don't like to choose sides because we've seen situations like this where the female was lying, right? And I don't like to say that the female is lying immediately because that's why a lot of them don't come forward, for fearing that people won't believe them. So I don't play that game. I just hate when guys are put in when they put themselves in situations where this can happen. Because again, what's stopping someone from accusing Tet McMillan of this or Shador Sanders of this? It's who you surround yourself with. It's you putting yourself in a position where you're around someone like that, that's toxic, that would be willing to derail your NFL career, or he might just be a sexual predator, right? Like, you're Isaiah Bond, bro. You should be able to get ass anytime you want. You shouldn't have to physically take it from someone. And he didn't rape her, but sexual assault is the step below rape. And if someone says no, you should be willing to just accept, no, you're Isaiah Bond. That should be okay, right? I don't know the situation, but teams aren't going to necessarily sit down and this is a guy that was going to be a second-round pick in this draft. It wouldn't have shocked me if someone fell in love with his speed a la Kansas City last year with Xavier Worthy and took him at the end of the first round. He had that type of talent. And now he may not get drafted. He's definitely a day 3 prospect if he gets selected at all. And that's someone just being willing to roll the dice on him. Now, again, all the facts aren't out there. We don't know what's going to happen. But the timing couldn't have been any worse. Because as far as I'm concerned, any NFL team that stands for something is going to be like, can't touch this with a 10-foot pole right now. You get exonerated, you clear your name, everything comes out that you had nothing to do with this, and then we'll talk. He's not getting drafted, I don't think. So, yeah, that's an unfortunate situation. He's a wild card, though. I mean, somebody could take him, and it'd be a steal. Like, I could see Dallas saying, shit, I don't care. Jared, like, I don't care. Shit, we'll have somebody follow his ass around. We'll give him a goddamn, they do this shit in Dallas. We'll give him a goddamn babysitter. Make sure he's not out here sexually harassing anybody. But he can catch football. He can run. I wouldn't be shocked if the Cowboys took him. I wouldn't be shocked if Cincinnati, like, they can't do it 2 years in a row, though. They took a known woman beater last year in Jermaine Burton. And what did he do? Beat some ass last year during the season. Like, you can't do it 2 years. But that's what Cincinnati does. They like, you don't want him? We'll take him. They're a rehabilitation team. Doesn't always work, but they're not afraid to try. They took Joe Mixon, right? Somebody had to take him, right? They took all of the dudes that you didn't want because of off the field issues, and they've had a checkered past. They've had a past of taking guys with the checkered past. They're not afraid. Somebody's going to take Isaiah Bond. I shouldn't say that. I don't think anybody's going to draft Isaiah Bond, but I wouldn't be shocked if one or two teams looked at him as you get to the 6th, 7th round. But I don't think he's getting drafted. That's a tough situation, though. That's a tough situation. Anyway, I digress. Those are all wild cards for me in this year's draft. All wild cards. Because I'll just say this: if you take Isaiah Bond in the 6th round, and then he's fully exonerated, all of this stuff is unfounded. You just stole a 2nd round pick in the 6th round. So, is there any team with stones enough to do that? The optics won't be great, and you may catch a little bit of backlash. I just don't see it happening right now. He'll have to be cleared, and sort of like the punter, right? Matt Ariza. This guy was going to clearly be drafted in the NFL. And then, or he might have gotten drafted by the Bills, I think. Then that stuff comes out. They cut him. He had to fully be cleared of any wrongdoing, and then the Chiefs went and got him, right? That's how that shit usually works. Ariza's situation, I don't think, came up until after he was drafted by the Bills. This one comes up before the draft. So, we'll see. Doesn't look like it's going to end well for Isaiah Bond in terms of hearing his name called next weekend. All right, let's go to the next segment, social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. If you're out there, you want your comment read on the air, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent and time permits, I cannot ensure you that we will get to your comment, but if you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to do that. Not only will you jump straight to the front of the line to ensure that your comment is read, but your comment will be put on the screen, read, and reacted to. So with that said, let's get to the one super chat that we have right now. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. JLG writes, any credibility to the Finns trading Ramsey? Yes, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. They want compensation in this year's draft. They've already eaten $4 million from a bonus that they've handed him out this year, a roster bonus. So it's still a pretty hefty deal. I think you're looking at 25 milli this year and another, 25 somewhere in that neighborhood next year as well. Pretty hefty contract. He's getting up there. He'll be 31 years old this year. I don't think he's the same player, obviously, that he once was. But the Dolphins, I think they kind of see the writing on the wall. They'd love to get out while they can. I don't know if they'll be able to. But they would like to see this transaction take place before the draft so they can get that draft capital and move on. But I just don't know if they're going to be able to find a trade partner, to be honest with you. But yes, all of the big NFL insiders are running with this. So this is a legitimate thing that Ramsey is on the block. Now, their general manager has come out and said, now we're not looking to trade Tyreek Hill, but Ramsey is available. So there is credibility to the Finns trading Ramsey. That is a real thing. He is on the block. I just don't, again, this isn't Jalen Ramsey, 6 years ago when Jacksonville was looking to move him and he was, the best corner or one of the best corners in football. This is Jalen Ramsey now at the age where we start looking at him and saying, is there a switch to safety in your future? Like we were getting to the twilight of his NFL career now. And we're starting to ask questions like, hey, is there a positional switch to keep this thing going for another 4 years or so? Right. So I don't see anyone signing up for that, but you just never know. And he can still play. Don't get it twisted. He can still play. But 25 milli for a 31-year-old corner, and you got to give up draft picks. That's pretty steep. Pretty damn steep, if you ask me. So I don't think I see that as being something that a lot of teams will be interested in doing. All right. Mike Lowry. Says if Starks, Donovan, Connerly, or JPJ are there at 29, who are you taking? Um, I think from a talent perspective, JPJ would be the most intriguing. But again, and I look, I've heard from a lot of people um, that he's grown up a lot at Tennessee. Um, but I I don't know character wise if they feel like he's a great fit for the locker room. It I've already told you guys that edge rusher is the best value for the Commanders at 29, and it to me it would be between JPJ and Donovan Ezeraku, James Pierce Jr. or Donovan Ezeraku. Connerly is cool, but I don't love him. If they went that direction, I wouldn't have any issues with it. I don't love him, and to me, he's a right tackle only at the next level, and I don't know if I trust him to be great at that. But and Starks is cool, Malachi Starks, but I'm not looking to like our safety position isn't dire to where that needs to be the pick. If you're looking, there are other safeties in this draft that you can take, I believe, that may not be Malachi Starks, but will give you quality play at the position. But the value, again, is what we're talking about. And the value would be edge rusher at 29. That's what we're talking about. So. Mike Lowry writes, well, he got into another accident after that. If that's correct, then I think the consequences of the second accident might have been too much for him. Sad story regardless. I don't know all of the particulars of what happened in the aftermath of the first one that was a fatal accident that um he potentially caused on some vehicular manslaughter type stuff. Um you just know it was a lot on him, and you see all the pouring of support for him and all the people that love this dude, right? By all accounts, he's just a fun-loving, good-natured kid that he made a mistake, and those happen. And you hate that had to be, one of the final chapters of his life. But again, I always caution people to be, I tell my kids, I tell my, nephews, my cousins, I've been talking to kids about this stuff, about decisions. Right? All it takes is one. All it takes is one. One false step, one wrong move, and everything you've worked for, everything you stand for can be altered just like that. They're about to do uh, um, a documentary. It's probably one of the best best titled documentaries I've ever seen in my life. But they're about to do a documentary on the um, Gilbert Arenas, Jarvis Crittington situation in the locker room with the guns. And I don't know if you guys know, but Crittington was then arrested for murder, not too long thereafter. I don't recall the um, details into that and whether he was able to beat that case or whatever, how much time he got, whatever the case may be. I don't know what the outcome was there, but they were talking about that one decision really altering his entire trajectory of his life, right? He went from NBA player to out of the league to then getting into a situation, and now all of a sudden, it's a totally different path for this dude, right? The name of this thing is going to be, and it's coming out in May. The name of this thing is called Shooting Guards. Oh my God. But it just all goes back to my initial point. Being serious though. Be mindful of the decisions that you make. So often as humans, we're so reactionary and impulsive. That's the word I'm looking for. You know, having worked in retail in my previous life, we would put items right by the cash register, and we would call them impulse buys. You're standing there in line, you're looking around, trying to kill time, and you see batteries. And you're like, shit, I could use some AA batteries. That's why you put them there, right? Or you put some gum there by the register. Why do you think they got gum and candy and shit? Because humans are impulsive. You look over, damn, a Snickers sound good right now. Grab the Snickers. Right? Damn, I could use some gum. I ain't had no gum in a minute, man. My breath been a little tardy too. You can grab the gum, right? That's why they put that stuff there. Stuff like super glue and all kinds of little shit that you don't think about you need, but then you're standing in line and you look over and like, shit, I could use a deck of cards. You want to know why that's there? Because who goes to the store for a deck of cards? Nobody. But you can always use a pack of cards. So you look over and there's a bicycle pack of cards sitting there. And you're like, shit, I could use a pack of cards. That's why they put that stuff there. Impulse buys. People are impulsive. You make decisions off the cuff. And I always tell people, think before you make your decisions, because it could change everything, right? Anyway, I digress. All right, let's get to the final segment of the show. And that is going, well, hold on, let me see. I don't think I got any more comments, but let me check. Yeah, I do got a couple more comments. I can take a couple more. I got a little bit more time. Take a couple more comments. Mike Lowry says, I like Jalen as a person. Absolutely couldn't stand the way he played quarterback. No awareness, inconsistent accuracy, and his mistakes tend to linger. He doesn't bounce back quickly. These are all knocks on Jalen Milroe. I don't think he is consistent NFL material, but he can grow. He can get better. You know, just coming out of college, to me, he's not ready to help an NFL team win in a traditional sense, but that's not why he would be drafted in the first round. If a team drafts him in the first round, if a team drafts him in the second round, they're not drafting him to come in here and compete for the starting job. They're drafting him because they feel like he can be a difference maker as a playmaker. Hey, we're going to put him in. We're going to have a package for him. Taysom Hill style, right? Where we're going to put him in and we're going to do some shit with him, right? We're going to have him throw some passes, but we're going to have him run that bitch. You know, we're going to have him, you know, do some things that can mess up a whole, you know, game plan, right? Line him up at receiver, send him in motion, have the quarterback throw him the ball. He then looks to throw it, or he can run that bitch, right? Because all he got to do is pump fake like he's going to throw. You got to respect that. Then he can run by you, right? And then turn it into a damn foot race. So there's so many things you can do with him. But yes, I think anybody that watched him play at Alabama knows he's not an ideal, you know, day one starter in the NFL. It takes some time for sure. John Wynn says, if Shedeur Sanders gets drafted to the Giants as a fourth quarterback, I don't see there being any reason for Russell Wilson to stay there in New York in the first place. So if they draft Shedeur, he would be I would say, the second quarterback behind Russell Wilson. Jameis Winston would be there, but unless they start the season off 5-1 and then Russ gets hurt, then you would put in Jameis Winston. But if the season is going sideways, if you get to week 10 and you're, you know, 3-6 or you're 3-5 and the bye week is coming up and you want to make a switch, you're not switching to Jameis Winston. You're going to go to Shedeur Sanders. So I think he'd be the second quarterback. He may be listed on the depth chart as the third quarterback, but it'd be very similar. And again, it's not the same thing, but it'd be very similar to Carson Wentz when he was drafted, right? They had Sam Bradford and they had, oh my gosh, what's my man's name? Chase Daniel on the roster before they drafted Carson Wentz. He was technically third on the depth chart. Well, Teddy Bridgewater snaps his knee in half back in 2014, I think this is 2016. Snaps his knee in half, and they trade Bradford to the Vikings. He leapfrogs, because he never really was the third quarterback. He leapfrogs Chase Daniel and becomes the starting quarterback in Philadelphia, and the rest is history, right? If they draft him, he wouldn't be QB4. He wouldn't be QB4. Ghost Rider says, your speech was nice and it's terrible. It happens to others. I mean, it's unfortunate. I've seen it. I grew up with dudes that didn't make the best decisions. I've seen it happen firsthand. I know what that looks like. And a lot of these dudes were smart as hell, but they grew up in environments that weren't the best. They made decisions based off of their situation, and it didn't work out for them. And I've seen, guys make one wrong decision and it turned their life upside down. I've seen that shit, and there are consequences. And unfortunately, there is redemption too, though. And you can come back. And that's why it sucks. The Kyron Lacy situation sucks because there could have been redemption waiting for him on the other side of that whole situation. But in his mind, that didn't exist. That didn't exist. That wasn't an option for him. All right, let's wrap this thing on up. Let's get to our final segment of the show. And of course, that is garbage time. So next week, things get tight. The draft is next Thursday. Obviously, day one of the draft, day two is on Friday. And so trying to figure out how I want to do my mock draft. I had something planned for y'all that was dope as hell, but I'm gonna scrap it till next year because I want to be more prepared and all that good stuff. But trying to figure out when I'm gonna do these mock drafts, kind of get that stuff out. Figure out how we're gonna do everything with the Commanders, Kings, this, that, and the third. Here's what I can tell you, and this is a programming note to those of you out there who care. Thursday, I will be live during the draft, well into the wee hours of the morning, if you guys care to be here that long. And we'll be chopping it up, talking about the draft, the first round, talking about what the second round and day two looks like, etc., who's left, all that good stuff. So the traditional draft party will take place on day one. Last year, I did day two on Bleacher Report, and then I had an after party. This year, I'm going to do day two with the Commanders Kings. Then I'm going to do the after party here. So we're still going to do the after party, but it'll be after the Commanders Kings do day two of the draft. So we will still do the after party here on the LouieTeeNetwork and kind of go over day number two, which is going to be really fascinating because that's where, to me, the meat and potatoes of this draft lies. I think also you can get some good football players in the fourth round, and then I think it starts to taper off after that. But we will see, how everything plays itself out. But that is the programming update. Next week, you'll get mock drafts. Next week, um, we will, I think, be live with the Commanders Kings on Tuesday, I believe, next week, I believe. We were supposed to be live tonight. I think we're going to end up being live tomorrow night are the Commanders Kings. And then day one of the draft party here on the Louie T Network. Day two, Commanders Kings will be live during day two of the draft. And then after party will be back here on the Louie T Network. So I'll be posting up those live streams in advance so you know what the schedule looks like. And I'll continue to remind you about that stuff. We also have, this is a side note. This is a non sequitur. We also have NBA play-in tournament action kicking off today. I'm gonna just give you my quick thoughts on that real fast. Let's see. So we got Hawks and Magic in the first game, 7 versus 8. Hawks are your 8 seed, Magic are your 7 seed. And then 7 versus 8 in the West. Grizzlies are your 8 seed, Warriors are your 7 seed. And I honestly believe that both home teams, I think the Hawks are going to beat the Magic. So I'll take the Hawks in the first game on the road to be the 7 seed in the West. And then the Warriors are going to beat the Grizzlies in the 7-8 game. And they will advance. And then I could easily see the Grizzlies. I'm a Grizzlies fan, missing the entire playoffs. Right? We haven't beaten a team with a record over 500. It feels like in 2 months. I think we've lost our last 12 games against teams with winning records. So and we have injuries now. Like I don't think all of a sudden we're just going to magically wake up because the games are important. We've been playing important games the last 2 weeks and we haven't won any of them. So I don't anticipate that changing now. So we'll see what happens there. And then we'll talk about what I think will happen when we get to those other games, because you have the 9-10 games tomorrow, and then we'll be back Thursday here on the Louie T Network podcast. And by then you'll have the matchups set for the last set of games, which will be the loser of the 7-8 game playing the winner of the 9-10 game. So we'll talk about that next time. Anyway. Jaden Skunda, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat. Hi, Jaden. Welcome to the Louie T Network. Glad to have you. Look forward to chopping it up with you in the future. Glad to have you on board. The Commandalorian, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. The Commandalorian writes, Lou, what do you think of defensive end Jordan Birch? So you haven't watched my draft prospects 101 series. I talked about Jordan Birch already. I don't like him. I want nothing to do with Jordan Birch. I don't like his game. I don't think his game translates well to the NFL. He will come in the NFL and he'll be like a Dietrich Wise type. That's cool if that's what you're looking for. That ain't what I'm looking for. And I'm not comping him to Jordan to Dietrich Wise, but that's the kind of impact he'll have. Like he'll get you 5.5 sacks, maybe. It may not even be that. I don't see what the people who think he's talented see. I just don't see it. So, not a big fan of his. He's not explosive. He's not dynamic. I don't know if there's any one trait that stands out above the rest with him. other than he moves well for a guy his size. That's it. But again, it doesn't translate to him winning off the edge or having a move skill set or a package of moves in his move Rolodex that he can go to get to the quarterback. He doesn't move the needle for me. He doesn't move the needle at all for me. And I watched a few games. Like I try to find the best in a player, right? You know, a lot of his sacks are cleanup sacks. He didn't win initially. He didn't just beat a guy. He was either unblocked or there was pressure elsewhere or the quarterback had to hold on to it. And he just kept working. And he got to the quarterback. So it's not the kind of guy that, you know, I'm looking at and saying, yeah, that's a guy right there. We got to have him. Nah, I'm good. Anyway, that right there is going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 497th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. We're closing in on episode 500. But in the meantime, I really appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in and supporting the movement. If you haven't already done so, please hit the like button. That helps this channel grow exponentially. Can't thank you enough. And once again, if you're watching this after the live show, leave down in the comment section, who is a wild card in this draft? I think Will Johnson is another one. Nobody brought him up. I think Will Johnson is another wild card. But we'll talk about that on another podcast episode. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You guys, have a good one. Have a good one. Take care. God bless. And good night.